Hey, everybody, welcome to the YouTube version of No Small Thing, and we are the podcast dedicated to helping you live a less certain and more curious life. And my name is Scott, and I've never done a YouTube version of the podcast before, but both Mason and I are super busy these days, and I really want to talk about Kendrick. So I thought I would just get on and do sort of a stream of consciousness about my experience or my journey with Kendrick Lamar. A lot of the things that we often do in the podcast is we talk about our journey. And I also think about this phrase, tyranny of taste. When Mason and I started the podcast, we heard this phrase where you sort of let your taste tyrannize or reign supreme in terms of what it is that you want to create. And I have been watching so many YouTube videos of people processing the Kendrick Lamar GNX rollout. And I want to contribute my own thing. And I think about what I would want to watch. And something that I haven't seen out there, although I'm sure it is out there, is somebody just recounting their personal experience getting in touch with Kendrick's music and his career and stuff like that. So I thought, well, if there is an audience for it and somebody wants to hear it and somebody would enjoy listening to somebody like me just share about their experience, then here it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to very organically, I have no notes. I just have a little candle lit here in our basement. I'm just going to share my off-the-cuff personal journey with Kendrick and his music. I'm sure you can imagine if you're watching this and I'm making a whole video about Kendrick that you know that I'm a fan. I don't know if I'm anywhere near the biggest fan or something like that, but I'm a huge, massive Kendrick fan. I would say over the years he's probably become one of my top 3 or 5 artists of all time. Kanye was in there for a very long time. And still holding out for Kanye, but it's very hard to be a Kanye fan these days. Almost harder every single day. But Kendrick is somehow filling that hole in my heart, that Kanye-shaped void in my heart. So I'm gonna just talk about my journey. I'll end with some reflections on the GNX rollout. So if you're a person that's watching this, I'm like, if you just want to hear about GNX, probably skip forward about 30 minutes because that's probably when I'm going to get to GNX, but I'm going to just talk about how I came to know about Kendrick and my first initial experiences with his music and sort of the musical spiritual journey I've been on with Kendrick for 10 plus years. And hopefully as I'm talking, you will start to have some resonance with your own experience and your own memories. I'm sometimes have had these experiences with Kendrick where I'm like, so sacred and personal, but it's happening in public. Like everybody's watching it on TV, but I'm having this massive experience. And some of the experiences I've had with Kendrick, I don't actually have. First of all, I don't have that many friends that enjoy rap music. They like it casually. I'm sort of a huge fan. I don't really watch sports or anything like that. I sort of watch and listen to rap music and then watch YouTubers talk about rap music and then anime and stuff like that. I don't even really watch a lot of regular old shows these days. I'm watching mostly anime. So I'm going to talk about some of my memories and experiences, and I hope it resonates with you, and I hope that you can sort of fill in the gaps and memories of your own experiences with this album or these albums. Okay, so my first initial encounter with Kendrick was not Section 80. It was swimming pools. So I was a youth pastor for 20 years, and I was in a car with some parents and some of their kids, their teens. I'm not a youth pastor anymore. I'm actually working on a master's to become a therapist. So that's a whole other story. But I was in a car with some parents and some kids, and these parents were really griping about the state of pop culture and their teens and what are these kids listening to these days? You know, every culture and iteration of people and generations have their own version of that little gripe in that speech. So they're in the car saying, oh, the rap music is getting so bad. I can't believe you listen to rap music, Scott. How do you let these kids listen to rap music? How does rap music have anything good to offer these kids? And I was like, well, what's an example? Like, what are kids listening to these days? And I hadn't heard of Kendrick yet. And they said, oh, well, there's this song called Swimming Pools. And it's just talking about filling up a pool of liquor and jumping in it. And I was like, well, that sounds a little weird. I mean, it doesn't sound, out of the box or too out of the ordinary for a rap song. But I definitely was like, well, let me check it out and see what this guy's talking about. And, of course, got home and was thinking initially I got the sort of the satire right away. I'm like, okay, well, this is classic parents. They're not understanding that this is satire. They're not understanding that he's sort of processing what it was like to have peer pressure to drink alcohol. And they can't understand that the voice that's encouraging him to drink is the voice of peer pressure. These casual parents, they're good parents. Casual listeners aren't really picking up those themes. But of course, I did sense a different voice, not just perspective, but sound. Obviously, in just Swimming Pools, Kendrick is doing a lot of characters. The sonics were different. I had never heard anything like that. And so the moment I heard Swimming Pool, saw the video, I was a fan. But I was a fan in the sense of like, this is an interesting new up-and-coming rapper. Let's see what else there is. I didn't really know about Good Kid, Mad City yet. This was a song I had just streamed or looked up on YouTube or Spotify or something like that. And at some point I started hearing, I think, that this album, Good Kid, Mad City, was telling a story. And I thought that was interesting. And I listened to it, and as many of you probably, well, I don't know what any of your experiences with Good Kid, Mad City was, but the first song that really struck me, aside from, well, I mean, it opens, I am a sinner. I'm not going to sing for all of you, but that's a great opening. And Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe is a wonderful mantra for the rest of my life. I got my drink. I got my music. Yeah, all that. Backstreet Freestyle was the one that I was starting to put on mixes and really connecting with. Not that that's my life or anything like that, but it was such a banger that I kind of casually listened to the album and this kind of got hooked on Backstreet Freestyle and thought, this guy's really cool. He's funny. It's interesting. I pray my dick gets big as the Eiffel Tower. That was a hilarious line. And I kept listening and kept listening and kept listening. And then the story really started to sink in. I started to pay attention. I started to understand that these little skits with his mom and parents in between on the answering machine were telling a story. And then, at the time I was working at a church. And when this finally happens where the friends are in the street and they're dealing with a death, and sort of a mystical woman who I know now was played by Maya Angelou shows up and says, you need holy water, and gets them to say the Lord's Prayer essentially, and invites Jesus into their heart. At that point, I have a hard time having a reference point for something that impacted me that quickly in terms of an album. Maybe a Kanye album, but that had a unique impact on me in terms of an album at that season of my life. And especially as somebody that was sort of the regular liturgical stuff that was happening at the church was not having as big of an impact on me those days. I was getting a little bored. And this cut through. Also, how do you make this stuff interesting for teenagers? How do you make it relevant? How do you, all of a sudden, it wasn't just like a story about middle-class white folks encountering Jesus in a Presbyterian church, which is where I worked, but Jesus or spirituality or God incarnate through a woman on the street with people who were dying and need help. This was real, and it was artistic, and it was creative, and it moved, and it was not just based on what I knew, at least. It was a story reminiscent of Kendrick's life, and I was hooked. And I think by the end of that album, his mom essentially gives him a benediction. And that's one of the things that I think has been one of the great joys of getting to know Kendrick over the years is it's lofty. At the end, she says, you need to go out and share your love or your heart or your story with these kids in Compton, essentially, but the rest of the world. And I thought, okay, well, that's a sweet ending, but I mean, who knows whatever happens to these rappers or these artists after they make albums like this. And if he could ever live up to this benediction or this calling that his mom put over his life, and whether that or not that happened in real life, it does happen on the album. And then, this huge song at the end comes on with Dr. Dre, Compton, ain't no city quite like mine. And, I grew up listening to Tupac and stuff. I'm 45, so I was a kid of the 90s. And the Dre Sonics, the NWA Sonics, Snoop and Dre, all those, the Chronic, those sounds. Also, I grew up in Seattle, so now I'm saying the word Sonics, which sounds funny. But that got me instantly. It was such a victorious way to end that album, and I was a fan. He a fan. He a fan. He a fan. It's really funny recording this by myself. Usually with a podcast partner, I have somebody that will laugh at my singing and stuff. But I do wonder when I'm watching other videos like this, what it's like to not have anybody laughing when you're trying to do something funny like that. But yeah, I was a fan officially. I didn't know what he was going to do next, but I was paying attention. And I'll probably talk about some clips or some moments, and I wonder if after the fact I'll go back and put some of these clips in the video. But I don't remember how long we had to wait for To Pimp a Butterfly. I imagine it was like 3 years. So a lot goes on in 3 years. And, I Google Kendrick every once in a while. I'm paying attention to the news if anything's coming up, if there's a new album. And the first thing I remember was he did this song that to my memory, isn't actually on any album that he's ever done, but it was on the very last episode of the Colbert Report, not the current late night show or whatever Stephen Colbert does. It was I'm pretty sure the last episode of the Colbert Report. And this video is relatively hard to find, but I'm sure if you search it, you can find it. And it's definitely an allusion or a reference point or a looking towards the sounds of To Pimp a Butterfly. Terrence Martin is in it, Thundercat, a lot of the singers. He's sort of got this leather jacket with his hand in his pocket, acting like he's kind of got a bottle of liquor on there, and he's got this jazz sound. And it's a long, sort of chill song where he's telling a story from different perspectives. And in a sort of a classic Kendrick fashion, it builds and builds and builds and builds and says, we don't die, we multiply. And it's this back and forth chant, but it was electrifying. And I was like, well, the performance, the vibe, the energy, the aura, the band, everything was different. And this is what keeps happening with Kendrick. It happens with the albums he puts out. It just happened with GNX. It's like so many of the artists that we love, Kanye. I'm going to get stuck on Kanye. Let us down. Drake has been letting us down, I suppose. So far, Tyler is not letting us down, right? I mean, Tyler keeps growing and aging well and creating more and more interesting music. And I have faith in a way that he's going to continue to age well, but so many artists don't. I don't know what we're thinking of J. Cole right now. But it was like, okay, so it's not like he made another great version of Good Kid, Mad City. It's like whatever was on the horizon, whatever's coming was going to be a fresh new iteration. And of course, I mean, I think in the conversation, many people would put To Pimp a Butterfly in the conversation for the greatest albums of all time, and nobody knew that exactly that was coming. So I don't know where you all were when that album came out. Maybe some of you are just in your teens or something, and you weren't around and weren't listening to rap music when that came out. But I remember when it came out as one of those albums, and I do this every once in a while when I know a big album is coming out. I just did it with Chromacopia. I'm like, I'm not going to listen to this casually. I'm going to find a nice quiet place, and I'm going to listen to this album front to back, beginning to end, with all my attention available to me, and I'm going to savor every single moment. And if To Pimp a Butterfly was going to be anything half as good as Good Kid, Mad City, I knew it was going to be awesome. So, it starts, I think I was listening to it like 11 p.m. It took me all the way until like 1 a.m. Every and where does a star, and then it just kicks off. To Pimp a Butterfly, you guys. The creativity, the twists and turns, the way every song sounded so different. For Free comes on, and you're like, I don't even know how to categorize this. This fast spoken word, this back and forth, the horns, the jazz, and then the way the poem starts guiding the album. I know you was conflicted. Misusing your influence. Sometimes I did the same. I'm probably saying it all out of whack, but I don't have any notes in front of me. I remember the first time I heard was devastating. And then I always loved at the time, well, after that first time I heard To Pimp a Butterfly, I was actually training for a marathon. And whenever I listen to You first, it just brings you to this low, sad, concerned, anxious, depressed state. And then All Right comes on, and I would be running, and I would just be like, oh, I'd get teared up. I'd run faster. and it has the Pharrell elements, and nobody knew exactly, obviously, where All Right was going to go in terms of an anthem. But then he has this journey to Africa, and at first I really couldn't tell exactly what was happening, but I was definitely there for the journey. And then you go through the other songs, and then you come to Mortal Man, or first you come to the new album version of where he performs it in jail, I Love Myself, and he gives this speech with a new spoken word, which brings you to Mortal Man. And I remember listening to that, and he creates a sort of a transcendent experience there, or a mystical experience. Like when you're listening to it, I don't know how you all feel, but I feel this is sort of the best of what music has to offer. Not only have I been taken on this journey where I'm sort of outside myself, immersed in the story that Kendrick is trying to tell, but at that point, for me, I feel like all of a sudden I've been whisked away into the clouds somewhere, and I am in another dimension, and I'm listening to Kendrick tell the story, rap, asking if you will be there for him, what happens. He wants you to think that he's like, love him like Mandela and all that. And I didn't know Tupac was coming. And when he started having this conversation with Tupac, my throat seized up. I started having tears in my eyes. I didn't realize quite yet that the poem had always been directed to Tupac. But that blew me away. And by the end, still to this day, when he's finally finishing his thoughts to Tupac, and the cymbals are starting to rise, and the voices are coming, I just imagine that he has so many influences here, but it sounds like church. It sounds like something other, transcendent, gospel, big. The ancestors, everybody is around, everything is happening, and then he's saying Pac, Pac, Pac. Of course, it feels like a dream. It feels like transcendence, but it is the best of what art can do. And we all have artists that we love, not just painters and musicians and writers and stuff like that, but any type of art that draws us out of ourselves. And how can somebody write just 5 lines like an amazing writer, and that can be more important than so many other things in our life? So moving, these little nuggets of words. And that album is still like that to me. I still think it has amazing replay value. People knock To Pimp a Butterfly like not having bops or something like that, but it does have bops, and it is listenable. And there are a few that are probably slightly too artsy or in the zone of like scaring the hose, but it is listenable. And every time you get something new, it's so rich. And there's a really famous interview interview with Bob Dylan that he put out like 20 years ago that's been making the rounds again because Timothée Chalamet is going to be in this new movie with him. And he's essentially saying, Bob Dylan, he's reflecting back probably as like a 70-year-old or something like that, and saying whatever he was up to when he was in his early to mid-20s, he can't do anymore. He knows that there's a certain type of magic to youth, or whatever stage or state of mind he was in when he made a lot of his original work. And he sort of maturely or soberly is saying, I can't do that anymore. And he says, I can do other things, but I can't do that. And it's just so amazing and cool and interesting to think that somebody like Kendrick leaned into the energy, the spirituality, the flow, the creativity of whatever was going on for him at that time, and gave us To Pimp a Butterfly. And it only gets better with time, and it is seriously one of my favorite albums, which is sort of a cliche. I was watching one of my favorite YouTubers the other day, Sean C., and he was talking to his chat, and they were saying, here are our favorite albums of all time as your chat, and they wrote Blonde and To Pimp a Butterfly as their favorite albums, and he was really disappointed because at this point it was like such a cliche. But that is one of my favorite albums, cliche as it is for some people. But one thing I think I skipped over that I think is worth mentioning, that if you haven't checked this out, it would be cool to go back and pause and watch this. But when for the longest time, whenever I've tried to get a Kendrick convert, which I don't really need to do anymore. In those days, I needed to try to have some Kendrick converts because he was still sort of underground even after Good Kid, Mad City. And To Pimp a Butterfly wasn't like pop. I mean, obviously Damn was much bigger than To Pimp a Butterfly, but I think if I were to say here's the best performance in my opinion from Kendrick Lamar, and I'm sure there's ones I don't know about in other concerts and stuff like that, but right at the beginning of the rollout of To Pimp a Butterfly, before the album actually came out, you know, the video for I had come out. People were a little nervous that the album was going to be a little bit like too peppy. He performed I on Saturday Night Live. And that performance is like the most anointed performance I have ever seen in my entire life. Like, first of all, he puts these like black contacts into his eyes. He makes his hair, people assume or wonder, to look like Old Dirty Bastard. He's got a white t-shirt on, and it's just him with his band behind him, and he performs I. And, you know, these days Kendrick is like super chill in his videos. Not like Us and Squabble Up recently. He's been super chill, and he has this sort of like, probably appropriately so, in a mocking way, like this, I'm chilling out. I'm like not letting any of this stuff get to me. But in that song and that performance, he flips out. And I think so many of the things that I think he was trying to convey, of course, through the last song in the album, well, before Mortal Man, in I, when he's in the prison, is he's got his dead friends on his mind, and he's got people that have been locked up on his mind. And he says, right before the album starts, he's stomping. He goes, "This one's dedicated for the homies in the pen. Hit me." And then he proceeds to just perform the hell out of that song. And then there is actually, he ends that performance with a little interlude from another spot mid To Pimp a Butterfly that in the album actually gets cut out. It fades out, but it's this dialogue that he's having with what you assume to be God. And he just starts screaming in this manic, just unhinged way where he says, "I've been looking for you my whole life. Appetite with a hepatite I can barely describe. Is it in a woman? Is it in money? Or is it in mankind? Tell me something about you, got me losing my mind. Where you at? From front to the back." And he ends just screaming. Like, basically he's saying to God, "I can be your advocate. I can do everything. Just speak to me. Tell me what you want me to do." And woo, I'm just getting emotional thinking about it. But that was To Pimp a Butterfly. I would love it if we had like a round table of people here and we could all share our initial conversation or experience about To Pimp a Butterfly. But like I said, maybe there's some catharsis in hearing somebody else's experience with To Pimp a Butterfly. Then Untitled Unmastered came out, and that was a whole other thing. I saw Kendrick perform Blue Faces on Jimmy Fallon, and so to hear the album version of that along with several other songs, amazing. I won't get too into Untitled Unmastered. And then I'm not going to really talk about Black Panther either. A great album. And, you know, he's going to do his SZA hits here pretty soon live with SZA on this tour. That's going to be amazing. Then we waited for Damn. And waiting. At this point, I think Kendrick had arrived. I think after To Pimp a Butterfly, it was sort of like he had these hits. And also I had started going back to Section 80 and, you know, huge standouts like Rigor Mortis. I started getting into that album. I won't go back too much there. This is all off the cuff, but okay. So I don't work at church anymore. I am working as a substitute teacher while I do grad school. So I'm orienting towards being a therapist, but I was a youth pastor for 20 years. And I took a group of kids, which was sort of a tradition in our church, on a mission trip to Mexico. So if you know anything about youth ministry, it is a pretty cliche, regular thing that you go on a mission trip to Mexico. A lot of interesting, strange, problematic things about that, but there we are. We did it. So this was, we were on one of those trips, and one of the kids rushed up. And at the time, obviously, the teens now were super clued into Kendrick, and everybody was excited about this album. Somebody ran up and said, "Damn is out. The album is out. The Kendrick album is out." And it's like, oh, dang. We have to be mature. I think we had like 2 days left of this trip, and there really was no room to go off and listen to a song. Most kids, including me, I'm not a kid, kid at heart. knew that we wanted to give that album the full attention that it deserved. So pretty much everybody was in solidarity about not going off and listening to the album, although I think I was definitely catching kids after they were supposed to be in bed listening to that album, which good for them, honestly. But when I got back, our family was going to have an Easter dinner. And that means it's Easter, so that was sort of a big deal in our family. And we were probably going to have about 20 plus people over. And I said, this sounds so funny in retrospect, but I had just gotten back from like this 2-week trip and I was pretty fried. And I said, I'm going to go to the gym today and then I'm going to go to a coffee shop and listen to Damn. I'm not going to come to this Easter dinner. And I did. I did do that. And it was fabulous. One of the best decisions I've ever made. And of course, we get this early story of him talking to this woman and the gunshot and then DNA. And I would say this is a strange thing because Damn is out of most of the albums, Damn is probably my least favorite. I love it. I think it's an amazing album. I want Damn to exist. But compared to Mr. Morale, compared to Pimp a Butterfly, compared to Good Kid, Mad City, I would say it's not my favorite. But it has those huge moments like DNA and Love and Loyalty and basically, obviously, the whole thing. But I don't think I had... It was one of those albums, I think maybe he was trying to get a little more poppy, although there's obviously a story, there's a lot of nuance, there's a lot of textures in that album. Obviously, you can like play it backwards and all that stuff. And I think because of that, it was one of those albums that was sort of on in the background a lot with my kids and me. And Loyalty and Love especially were just really kind of fun, smooth jams that we'd be singing along together as a family. And then there was like a lot of really amazing performances that went with the album that I think just became sort of iconic. And during the rollout, okay, I do remember when the Humble video came out and he had the like big robe and crown on and the video is super cool. So that was huge. That provided a lot of like hype for the album. But I always think it's so strange that hands down, that's his biggest album now. Like the most streams. He won the Pulitzer Prize for that and not To Pimp a Butterfly. And I would say rarely these days do I ever feel like putting on Damn. I think also at the time Chance was up on the move, on the rise. And I think Coloring Book was probably on the horizon. And I do think, well, I wonder what Kendrick albums were coming out around that time. Probably Life of Pablo, right? So Life of Pablo started to overshadow. Coloring Book, I think, started to overshadow. And there we go. Chance is another example of somebody that what happened? Chance did not fulfill what we thought Chance would do. And I feel like recently there's been these like false starts about a career reboot or a new album. And The Big Day, what can anybody say about The Big Day? It's like a big it's like somebody handing you 3 giant things of cotton candy. It was fun initially to listen to, but I don't know if I'd ever want to go back and listen to The Big Day. I love Coloring Book, but there's another person that sort of let us down. Whatever, these people don't owe us anything, but let's see. So Damn came out now, and then we had the 5-year wait, right? 5 years of what is going to happen. Is he gone? Has he given up on music? There were rumors of like a country album. And then I think there was the songs with Baby Keem. And so that was like, whew, so he's back. He said, yeah, Kanye might have changed his life, but me, I'm still an old school Gemini. And it was that song with Be Patient. What was it? I am the Omega. You guys know. I'm not gonna put it on. But that was exciting because it was like, okay, Kendrick seems pretty fired up and electrified. Be patient, brother. New flows coming. Be patient, brother. Yeah, so I was getting fired up. I'm sure a lot of you were for a potential new album. Again, there was like rumors that there was going to be like a country album or something like that. So then The Heart Part 5 came out. And anything I was probably just saying about like To Pimp a Butterfly vibes, that transcendence, that sort of magical anointed inheritance, like where you feel like you have the ancestors' hands on you or something like that. That is what I was feeling when The Heart Part 5 came out. And, you know, what type of album did it hint at? None of us knew. Obviously none of us knew, but I mean, it's really funny to think about now, right? With all the AI stuff that happened in that video, but it was less about the AI for me. I mean, I would say too, that was probably my first taste of starting to watch reaction videos. I think I saw one person react and I was like, oh man, do you guys know Big Quint? That was my first probably real inroad to watching somebody do reaction videos. Big Quint indeed. And he's sort of phased out of doing those. He only does them every once in a while right now. But again, so cathartic to have this experience by yourself in your house where you're like, I think this is amazing. Does anybody else think it's amazing? And to just be able to watch people as they experience just the initial first beats of that song playing. They're like, wow, he's sitting there just looking kind of contemplative and a little scary and staring off and all my fans, all my beautiful fans. And then he starts rapping and you see everybody, oh, whoa, here he goes. And he starts saying all these things where certain people are just resonating. The culture is involved. And like, oh, everybody's like, yeah, the culture, that's culture. And he starts spelling out all these things that are sort of traditional for the culture, but should they be? And, fuck calling it culture. And he goes through all of the motions of turning into OJ and Kanye and Will Smith and all those people. But the coolest part, especially in terms of the video, and I'm sure the song would have captured it regardless, but when he turns into Nipsey Hussle, and at the time I knew a little bit about Nipsey Hussle, knew that he had passed away, and knew some of his music, but it was really obvious how much he meant to Kendrick, how much he meant to California. And as I was watching these other reactors react to this part, it was like such an educational experience for me, but also again, like catharsis, like so moving when he turned into Nipsey, and so fun to be able to watch probably up to like 20 videos at one point or another where you're seeing the real-time reaction on people's faces when Nipsey comes on and when he starts sharing his message that he has to Nipsey's family and stuff like that. And so it seemed as if as Mr. Morale was approaching that, again, it felt probably like To Pimp a Butterfly vibes, whatever that means. And I guess we just got to stew in The Heart Part 5 for a while. And Mr. Morale, when that album came out, I just sat with my kids and we canceled everything. We might not know which way to go on this dark road. I'm not trying to say real, but that album to me, I would put second. I would put To Pimp a Butterfly first for me, and Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers second, for lots of reasons. It has a lot to do with the space I was in my life at that time, but I've been in therapy for 6 years. I'm going to be a therapist. I already knew of Eckhart Tolle, and the sonics, the things that he does in there is something I'm interested in. I think a lot of people passed over on Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers because it was too artsy. And I think he had some big hits. I think like N95 and stuff and songs like that were hits. But the story he told, it almost sounded like a musical. It almost sounded like beat poetry, spoken word. There really isn't anything I can think of off the top of my head that I could reference. It's not like backpack rap. It's not like Tribe Called Quest or anything like that. It's not like Lupe Fiasco. It's not like obviously like Lil Wayne or anything like that. I'm having a really hard time off the top of my head knowing where to place Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. I think it stands alone. I'm sure if anybody actually watches this or wants to put something in the comments, what else does Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers sound like? I think it sounds like a musical. And in that sense, I don't know if there's another rap album that quite captures it like that. I love the journey you go on. I love Father Time. I love the beats. I love the message. I think he got docked a little bit in this album for Anti-Diaries, which is fair. And I would love to hear more conversation about that song. When I would read reviews, I think people were thinking he was coming up short when he was engaging with a really important topic like he was on Anti-Diaries. And maybe there was some some unnecessary misgendering that was going on of certain family members that you could have been just as artsy and provocative in doing that song without doing that. So it might have he might have shot himself in the foot a little bit with that song. But when it gets to the end, I think one of the things for me that was resonating at the time, and I actually took my kids to see him in concert here in Seattle for that tour, was I Am Not Your Savior. And at the time I had grown up as like sort of this Christian leader and was feeling the weight in my own way of at least what I perceived to be a type of pressure to be morally upstanding or have answers for people's spirituality or something like that. Whether that was true or not, it's something I felt. And for him to cast that off and say, I choose me, I'm sorry, and to sort of go on this journey of letting the weight of whatever he built up and taking responsibility for it. Because I think at the time I had already had a master's degree and had built up a character or a caricature or a version of myself that was supposed to be a leader. And we're always leading one way or another, but at that season of my life, I really resonated with the journey that he was articulating in that album. And for him to basically say, I know I built myself up. I know I'm the one that put this benediction from my mom to basically save LA and the rest of the world, to go out and tell my stories. And I've been trying to do that. And I'm, the butterfly that has beaten the system. And I'm on this journey of becoming like what? Bob Marley or whoever, like what? A modern day Martin Luther King or something like that? Or is he going to be the new leaders of a movement like Malcolm X or something like that? Like, who is Kendrick? It seemed like he was, before that album, heading in a direction where he might be positioning himself as sort of a radical, social justice oriented musician, black hippie. It's like, what is he up to? So for him to sort of cast that off and say, that's not me anymore. I'm choosing me, I'm choosing my family, I'm choosing my peace. In a way, I often have these ponderings of like, what is motivating these artists? I mean, obviously something motivated them to begin with, but once you have success and money, why don't you just move to an island or something like that? Why don't you just move somewhere peaceful and live your life? Like what motivates you to keep creating, especially when there's so much criticism and you have access to bodyguards and fancy homes and you could just go live your life in peace? What motivates people to keep creating? So I think, if this is it, if this is his announcement that he's gone on this journey and he's not going to create anymore, fair. That is very fair. So I was at peace with that album, and after that, I was like, I bet we're not going to get anything for a long time, but I'll always be a Kendrick fan. Thank you for all the stuff you've done for us, the music you've produced, the inspiration, the memories. We'll have these albums, and thank you, Kendrick, and we'll move on to some other people now. And okay, I guess now we're going to get to GNX in a second. I'm not going to say too much about it. If this goes well, maybe I'll come back and say a little bit more, but I guess Like That came out. And he sounded different. I mean, he sounded a little bit like he did on that Baby Keem song. I guess it wasn't, Family Ties. It wasn't a Baby Keem song, it was the both of them, but he sounded fired up. He sounded like he was getting into his provocative, angry Gemini side that was fighting. And so when he came out and said, there is no big three, it's just big me, and what is it? First person shooter. He just said it all. I mean, it was he wasn't really subliminal, although I don't think he said Drake's name. And it was a friendly fade, right? It was a friendly fade in a way. I mean, it was aggressive, but it sounded like probably what he did on Control. And I didn't really go back on my experience with Control. I liked Control when it came out, but it wasn't like, whoa. I mean, it didn't like change my life. I did like how it provoked people to try to respond to him and stuff like that. But Like That for me probably felt, I guess in retrospect, historically, we'll say Like That was probably more significant than Control. Wouldn't you agree? And I guess again, now there is this age of reactors, which I want to say reactors. Thank you. I mean, I'm making this because of reactors. I am inspired. I heard somewhere that somebody said if you're a consumer of something, you should do your own version, like give back in your own way. And I'm a Patreon supporter of some of my favorite reactors, but this is my version of like, okay, I'm going to also add my voice to this conversation, even though I'm not doing like a reacting video. But to be able to watch the live reactions of Like That, it was so fun. And obviously we felt at the time something was afoot, an energy. And what was going to happen? And was Drake going to respond? Was J. Cole going to respond? And so I do remember when J. Cole responded, I was on my way to a substitute teaching job in the morning, and I listened to the song. And I don't know what you think when you listen to that first song from J. Cole. I forget the name of it at this point. It's so insignificant. But I was like, nothing is hitting. I mean, my initial feeling in my car by myself without any reactors to listen to or a friend to talk to was that it's extra weird that at the end he's going into saying, I respect your catalog. He like kind of low-key disses To Pimp a Butterfly. And then he kind of respects Damn, and he says, and this is just aged so poorly. Like I think about Euphoria, and Euphoria just continues to age so well at this point. But this song has aged so poorly. Like you're not in your prime anymore. Like that was your prime when you did Damn, and he's like roasting Mr. Morale, and oh my gosh, like what a weird. And then of course he makes the apology. Now, I will say my initial reaction when I saw the J. Cole apology was very emotional in a good way, whatever that means. I thought this feels good. It's not like none of these things that any of these people have done should be the way. The Mandalorian, this is the way. I don't think there is a way in rap. I don't think there's a way in any art or politics or any form of anything. I don't think there should be a way to do something. I like innovation. I like people having their different voices. I like that there's a J. Cole, a Drake, and a Kendrick. I obviously like Kendrick the most out of all those guys, but I liked that there was somebody that was defusing or de-escalating or apologizing or showing that you didn't have to join the beef if you don't want to. And people can roast J. Cole all they want, but obviously as time went on, there were just memes galore of J. Cole being somewhere on a beach relaxing as Kendrick started firing and Drake started firing. So I just remember thinking, this is cool. I think this is valid. It's not necessarily what I'd want Kendrick to do or Drake to do. It's not necessarily what I'd want Tyler to do if somebody was coming after him, but I thought it was valid. I think J. Cole was like rooted in himself in a way. I think it is a valid path that people should be able to take if they want, if they get into a similar situation on a smaller scale. And so I remember just feeling my gut reaction was to really respect J. Cole, to appreciate that moment in history. I know a lot of people were like let down or something like that, but I was never really like a J. Cole fan like that. So I wasn't like needing him to, do something for me there. And then Push-Ups came out, and then the tailor-made freestyle. And then I will say this. Okay, everybody, let's really get into it here. I don't know what you were thinking at the time. I have a lot of confidence in Kendrick. I was never thinking Kendrick was washed. I was never thinking that Kendrick couldn't stand on his own, but I was thinking that maybe Kendrick isn't interested in a beef like that. Like that. Like maybe just wanted to, well, we never really saw him do much after Control, right? He did Control and then just kind of went and disappeared for a while, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. So I was wondering, did he just want to do that little hit and like that and leave it be? And is his tactic going to be to let Drake sort of spin his wheels and look a little silly for even trying to come at Kendrick? And then maybe the tagline would be like, even though Drake is theoretically the most successful rapper in terms of streams and money and stuff like that, maybe Kendrick definitely thinks he's not on his level as a lyricist. And that's true. Whenever you see anybody making a list of the best lyricists of our time, rarely is Drake even in the top 10. Most people will put Kendrick as number 1 or number 2, right by Jay-Z and Nas. So, and Eminem and Andre 3000, but I think people are really, the more Kendrick raps, the more like he is there. He's there in the conversation to be number one even, which I agree with. So I was thinking, okay, you know, Drake is saying drop, drop, drop. Kind of saying, oh, you're in that little apartment up there. You better come up with a quadruple entendre or something, you know, and really egging him on. And I was like, I don't think Kendrick's going to do it. I think he's just going to I think he's just going to be like, you're not on my level. You know, it's like if Lil Wayne or somebody on his level, like his level of lyricism in terms of how he sees himself, were to come at him, maybe even J. Cole. But I think he just wanted to get that little dig in, make his statement about the big three, say it's just big me, and then let everybody know that, like, yeah, it is just big him. He doesn't really need to defend that. And so I was like, all right, well, Drake's doing all these, you know, these taunting, you know, he's using the Drake or the Snoop and Tupac AI, and I didn't know what was going to happen, just like you all didn't know what was going to happen. And I don't know. I know where I was. I don't know exactly what day. Wasn't it a Tuesday? Euphoria came out. Okay. So I will say the performance of I on Saturday Night Live, The Heart Part 5, and Euphoria. I'm pretty sure, right here with no notes, I think those are my favorite Kendrick moments. Not Like Us was amazing, but Euphoria, when it came out again, it's like if you could say, okay, I know what Kendrick is. He always surprises us, right? I think that's when the first chords of when Mr. Morale starts, that song, we might not know which way to go. And I think I think just free associating, I'm thinking about My Beautiful Dark Twists of Fantasy. Can we get much higher? You know, like when that came, that was sort of a surprise. Transcendence. Like, we know what Kendrick's capable of, but again, like back to that Bob Dylan thing, maybe certain people can't do that anymore. Maybe they just caught lightning in a bottle and they can't really capture it like that anymore. So for him to start with that loop of Richard Pryor from The Wizard of Oz saying everything they say about me is true, and then that Teddy Pendergrass sample and the smooth, slow, right when I heard it, I was like, I cried just thinking about, this is an artist. It's everything we would have wanted and didn't know we wanted, because that's what's so fun about him. Like, we don't know we want that. And then when he does it, we're like, it changes the whole structure of diss rapping, obviously. Like, who started a diss rap the way he started Euphoria? 2 beat changes, all of the things that he said. I remember when he came in the Pop Out tour, he comes up slowly after all the different songs that have come out, and he just comes out with that slow jam, right? So when he comes out with Euphoria, there was so much content, and it was that great mixture of insightful, poking, calm, the tone. He has all the different tones in there, sort of that condescending, lilting lullaby tone. You know, all the stuff that he says in the early parts, I can even predict your angle. Tommy Hilfiger was your thing, but Fubu had never been your style. All those things he says in the early parts. You're looking just like a degenerate. I can even predict your angles. And it's just this, like, that in of itself was fabulous. But then there's the beat switches, and then he gets in that crazy Kendrick tone, and then he gets in that braggadocious tone. So there's sort of the insightful lyrics, and then there's just the petty lyrics, like, I hate the way that you walk, the way that you dress. I know you asked for that feature request. And then the way he ends it too, I think, was more foreshadowing to GNX, where he's like, I hate all of you. I'll field goal punt y'all. Nobody ever took my food. And man, watching the reaction videos to that, it's like, ironically, Kendrick is saying, I am not your savior. And in a way, that song has like savior vibes. It's like the return of somebody, you know, second coming. It's like, we all thought he was over with Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, and then all of a sudden he's coming back with this song, and it's like, this is the Kendrick we want. This is the Kendrick we know. This is also a new Kendrick. This is the Kendrick that we know Kendrick is capable of being. Also, like, I guess I haven't really said it like this in this little video, but for hip hop fans, I'm a '90s hip hop fan, and I'm also just a regular old middle-aged white guy in Seattle, but I was a huge Tupac fan. I mean, not that that his music necessarily spoke to my culture, but in a way, his spirit does speak to anybody. And I was sort of a purist in the sense of liking De La Soul, Tribe Called Quest. Again, I really probably had no business listening to The Chronic or anything like that, but I did, and there they are, and I liked those albums, and I have in my own way liked sort of the subversive message, the protest spirit of hip hop. And I can get into fun, regular old just party hip hop too, but like the spirit of what Kendrick is trying to invoke in his music, plus the fact that he has this sort of like meta archetypical enemy in Drake, this sort of like yin and yang polar opposite. Like Drake stands for everything that Kendrick doesn't. And so for him to finally be able to say, or desire to say, or want to say, or the time is here when he's like, this is not it. And people need to know this is everything I am against. How can this person be this successful? How is he lulling? You make music that pacify him. I make music that electrifies him. How can this many people be being lulled to sleep by this guy? And I love that line too. Keep making me dance, waving my hands, and there won't be no threat. Like, just make some pop songs. Stop coming at me and stop branding yourself as somebody that's threatening or grew up in a certain life that you didn't. That makes so much sense to me. So, man, watching those reaction videos, and then the 616 song came out, amazing. What was the other one? Euphoria? Was there another one after that? No, because then, okay, so 616 in LA, and then so I remember where I was in my house, and I remember Family Matters came on. I was like, oh crap, here it is, because people have been talking about like Drake's Red Button or whatever like that. So I watched Family Matters, and I was like, okay, this is looking bad. Kendrick beat his wife. How are people going to respond to this? What's going to be the fallout? And this is just what's so fun. These moments, I'm not like a sports fan, so I don't go back to like this Super Bowl thing or this thing that happened in this sort of championship, these electrifying. I know there's exciting things that happen in sports. I just don't follow sports like that. So we watch Family Matters, and then I get like a notification or something somewhere. I mean, if you're a fan of this stuff, I guess you just get notifications. Meet the Grams is out. So holy crap. So again, it's this sort of foresight, or that, in first person shooter, Drake and J. Cole are playing chess, right? And it's like Kendrick just keeps outplaying the game here in terms of chess moves. And we hope, when Kendrick's like, I have more in stocks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus 5. We're like, I hope that's true. He might just be bluffing. And people kept saying, oh, he's got another one on the way. And it's like, well, he did have another one on the way. And then Meet the Grams again. In the same way as Euphoria, I'm like, this is the artsy diss track. By the time where he's like, you lie. And this is one big battle with yourself. It's like you're feeling this the most almost horrifying, scared, sad, cringy, worried. It's doing something in the dark recesses of your spirit as you're listening to End of Meet the Grams. In that piano, I think that was produced by The Alchemist. And you're saying this is the Kendrick version of a diss track, or the several diss tracks where he's doing what he's done in all of his albums with different sounds and textures and emotions. He's now utilizing for the sake of bringing down Drake. I don't have any water or anything like that. I'm just rolling with this video. Next time we'll bring some water. But so I thought that was it. I thought I was gonna wake up the next morning and it was gonna be like, well, that's it. I mean, what Drake did was decent, but obviously Kendrick won. I mean, how could anybody respond to the takedown? That was a bigger takedown than the story of Adidon, right? So then, of course, I mean, now the rest is history. But I remember getting up the next day, or it was Tuesday or something like that, and Not Like Us came out, and that's the stage and the era I think we're in right now. We didn't take into account, or I didn't take into account, that the new era wasn't going to be doubling down on the artsiness, doubling down on the meaning. I didn't think Kendrick was generous enough to give us bops. You know, Euphoria wasn't really a bop. It was sort of a classic diss track with like, you know, in the spirit of Ether or The Takeover or something like that. Like, it wasn't really a jam, and I guess that's what everybody's saying. For Kendrick to be your hero, and for people to continue to be saying like he's cool, but Drake makes the hits. Kendrick can't do that. And you're thinking, well, Kendrick's a genius. Kendrick understands music. Kendrick understands how to make a compelling song. I'm sure it's not like that. I mean, he can make a hit if he wants. He just doesn't do it like that. He makes sort of interesting, respectable, creative, avant-garde music, not pop hits like Drake does. And Drake has some artsy stuff here and there. But so for They Not Like Us come on, I just remember thinking, Mustard on the beat right off the bat. Mustard on the beat. Oh, it was like, what is this? How is he rapping? How is he sounding? What is this? West Coast, Snoop Dogg, Tupac, Too Short, NWA. What is this? What is this? And as I'm listening, I'm just getting fired up. I mean, it's like ear candy, right? And I remember thinking, this is so fun. The sort of PDF allegations were going a little bit over my head. Oh shoot, I feel like I've already sworn a few times in this. I noticed that a lot of the reactors don't swear, so I hope I don't have to edit this. I don't want to go back and edit it. I think when I started really thinking, this is special, this is doing something in my spirit, it's getting electrifying. He says, all eyes on me, and I'm going to turn it up to Pac. Hey, I was like, who is this rapping? And then he says, I won't pass the aux. Like, I think he was just sounding so playful. At the end, the first listen, when he started saying the sort of history lesson about Atlanta, let me break it down for you. You know, I was like, oh no, I hope this doesn't turn into, I hope Kendrick doesn't ruin or tarnish the potential for this big song, because I thought he was going to, now he's going to get artsy. It's going to get too long and drawn out. He's going to sort of spoil the anthemic nature of this album, but somehow it worked. And then we have it. I mean, the rest is history. I mean, you guys don't need to, whoever's watching this doesn't need to be told how big Not Like Us is. And then we jammed on that all summer. I was shocked to see how many families and children knew the lyrics to this song when I was with people in the summer. You know, you get in the car, no matter the words, no matter the content, everybody was listening to Not Like Us. And then the video came out, and he has everybody in LA, and then the pop out show. And I was like, I mean, just giving us so much content, and after so much time, like, boy, 15 years of being this sort of elusive person who's always holding back content, who's always only showing up here and there. And even when he does show up, it is some sort of art performance. And you're like, cool, but like, this was everything we'd ever wanted. And plus, when he gets all of the people from LA up on the stage to take the big picture, this is the actual real manifestation of whatever he put on the cover of To Pimp a Butterfly. This is the manifestation of his mom's benediction or charge to him at the end of Good Kid, Mad City. To see the impact he's having and had on that culture there, who showed up, the way it united everybody, the way he allowed that to happen, the way he had Black Hippie on stage, Dr. Dre, all that stuff. Just pure enjoyment. And of course, now Schoolboy Q had this huge album this year. Tyler the Creator had this huge album this year. Ab Soul had this huge album this year. Doechii from TDE now is having, I know she's not, I don't think she's from Florida. But there is, I was watching Ebro today, and he was like, you know, last year at this time we were lamenting that hip hop might be dead. And hip hop might be dying. Like, where is it going? Who's taking us forward? I mean, I even watched like the Danny Brown podcast, and Danny Brown was never going to like save hip hop, but I thought Danny Brown was a person that I was watching to see like maybe as he's evolving and maturing, this is going to be a new person, or JPEG Mafia or something like that. And I certainly don't think Danny Brown has given up, but I think he's more in the post what I assumed Kendrick would be in the post Mr. Morale season, where it's just like I'm getting into my 40s and I'm settling down, and I might make an album here or there, but my prime is done. Like the prime is over. So I don't know what you guys thought. Then there was a Super Bowl announcement, which was cool. And then as I'm sure all of you, and I'm going to wind down here. I'm not going to spend too much time on GNX. It's too long. This has already been an hour, so I don't know who's watching at this point, or if anybody's watching. But I woke up and I got that trailer, and I texted my daughter who's in college. We really bond over this stuff, and I was like, oh my gosh, just saw a new trailer for a new Kendrick album, and within 10 minutes, of course, there it is on Spotify. And then we have Whacked Out Murals, and we have Squabble Up, and we have Luther, and the rest is history. And I've been listening to the album, as I'm sure you have, nonstop. If you clicked on this and you've watched already this far, a random person in his basement talking about Kendrick, I'm sure you've listened to GNX. I think for me, TV Off probably is my favorite. I would take TV Off even over Squabble Up, but I think just to round out this entire conversation about Kendrick's albums and my experience so far, I love, and am so grateful for that in the history of Kendrick, no matter what happens next, we have the bop album. We have the pop album, the banger album, whatever you want to call it. I don't know if it's appropriate to call it like the gangster album, the pop out album, the swagger album, the unapologetic. You know, I was listening to Sean C. listen to this album, and when it got to Man in the Garden, and he's just like, I deserve it all. I mean, Sean C. didn't really love Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, which I think is valid, and his reasons are valid. And for him, it's like replay value. He's like, I'm not going to really go back and listen to that album because it depresses me. And I don't think it depresses me. It just gets me into a really welcoming, a contemplative state that I welcome. But he said he doesn't want to listen to that. It doesn't have much replay value. Well, obviously this has replay value. And Sean C., who from my perspective tends to be really cautious about praising albums, was like, this is what I want in a song. I want Kendrick to stop pretending to be humble, to stop pretending like he's not the guy. And we want a song where we can sing these lines to ourselves. I deserve it all. We want pump up anthems. We want to feel good about ourselves. We want to party. We want to have fun. And to think also that this person that we love so much also has that in him, that he also has a fun side, that he also has sort of a petty side and a playful side. Scru Face Jean is another guy I love to watch. And he always says righteous and ratchet. Like he likes an album that has some righteousness, has some ratchetness in it. And I think Kendrick is doing that with the sort of dualities of his character. And so I remember when I was listening to that album, I mean, as much as like Blue Lips from Schoolboy Q has been one of my favorite albums this year, it grew on me, you know? And a lot of Kendrick songs and a lot of content that I've loved over the years has grown on me. I don't want to call art content. But this was instant, right? I mean, if you experienced GNX, it was like instant. It grabbed your attention and it never took your attention away. The whole thing felt like candy, not in that the Big Day way where it was like 3 helpings of cotton candy, but maybe just a really super tasty meal that just has different courses that keep coming, that keep your attention for easily keep your attention, you know? And for him to have so much fun and so much content, but then to have like the deep reflective stuff like Heart Part 6 where he's talking about his friends, and for him to be able to sort of add new layers and hint at potential elements to not just beef with Drake, but when he says it's F all you now, like maybe there's going to be more beef, maybe there's going to be more fights he's going to pick or something like that. But then of course, like, oh, I was going to say, like when that Mustard part hit, I mean, that's been fun to watch all the live reactions about Mustard, because I'm just listening and I was just like in my headphones like, wow. I remember just texting instantly as many people as I could. I just paused the song and started finding the memes because I know this is going to be memeable. And I think I just loved that even with all the bops and of course the SZA slow jams, We end with just a classic Kendrick flip. Um, he's almost like the M. Night Shyamalan of his albums sometimes. And for him to be, this is why it's so fun to watch those live reactions, because I was listening thinking he might be talking about Whitney here. He might be talking about different lovers over time, maybe different relationships. And for him to just to have that thing of like, this has been my pen all along, this relationship that I've had. And to be able to watch in real time, people sort of get emotionally vested in this song and pause and be like, is he talking about Whitney? And now that I've seen and listened to the album, I know where he's going, and to see that emotional hit that people get when he says it's been my pen, and for us to appreciate the relationship that he's had with his pen, and for us to be grateful for the way he's utilized it and for the gift that he has, and for him in so many ways too, in some ways, be the reincarnation of so many of these really Al Green, whoever he was talking about, Billie Holiday on the album, Tupac, Michael Jackson, whoever it is that he's sort of emulating or idolizing, all the people that he's let into his psyche or his spirit that he's able to channel when he's creating his art. I guess in some ways this is my own personal little silly YouTube tribute to my own experience with Kendrick. So I don't know. I don't even know if this is a good setup for a YouTube video. I'm sort of backed into a corner here. I don't know if this is a good positioning for my microphone. Over here, back, over here. Thanks for listening. I want to try to do more videos like this, because if it isn't apparent throughout this video, I do enjoy sharing my opinions and thoughts. Sometimes I think I'm itching to get this stuff out, and it's just been that thing of not wanting to turn on the microphone because it's not something I do. I do it with another person, Mace, for no small thing. And it's easy to have somebody across from you talking, and you can just do it that way. So I didn't know how this would feel, and it feels decent. I think once I got started talking, it worked. So if you watch this, I hope you enjoyed it. I would, because I obviously don't have any followers or anything. If you want to engage in the comments, I'll talk to you in the comments. But man, Kendrick, so grateful. I would love to interview and have conversations with anybody on this YouTube channel or on our podcast, No Small Thing, about Kendrick. If you like anything you heard today, or if you think this is interesting, we have this podcast called No Small Thing. We've been doing it for over 5 years, and the idea is that anything can be interesting, and we think that becoming a more curious person is a very healing thing for someone's spirit. And my podcast co-host Mace is a licensed therapist. I'm on my way to be a licensed therapist, and to be able to approach art, yourself, community, society, people, any and everything with a little bit more curiosity, I think that can be a very healing thing for individuals, for communities. And so sometimes we take on big topics, and that takes a little bit more preparation, and that we have a little bit more reverence for those topics. But we also do really silly topics, and we try to show that like anything is worth getting curious about. So an episode we did recently that we haven't released yet is on hoodies. This is that hoodie Blanks by 13. If you guys are online at all, you guys see ads for this. So I got hooked by the ad, and I thought I will get a Blanks by 13 hoodie and just see. And actually, so far I've been enjoying it. It happens to be sort of that Dodger blue color, accidentally, kind of like the hoodie Kendrick wears in the Squabble Up video. That wasn't intentional at all, or maybe subconsciously. But yeah, we basically had an hour-long conversation about hoodies. And before that, we had an hour-long conversation about Freud and psychoanalysis. And we haven't released those yet, but those are the types of things that we cover on the podcast. And man, I don't know how these reactors do these, because I'm starting to lose my voice. I don't have any water. But yeah, let me know what you guys thought of any of the things I had to say, if it was helpful, cathartic, interesting, if any of it resonated with you. I'd love to hear some of your stories. And as Anthony Fantano said, I'm stealing your line, Anthony Fantano, Kendrick Lamar forever.